Our guest today is Richard Tyler. Richard Tyler is America's corporate and entrepreneurial business expert. He's recognized as the world's top sales trainer and management consultant. Richard is the CEO of Richard Tyler International, Inc., as well as a diversified family of companies and services, which include Richard Tyler International Technologies, a web service company, Excellence Edge Limited, a product film and production company, and Richard Tyler Films, a film development company, among others. He's also a best-selling author, a 5-time XP Award winner, a 2-time Quilly Award winner, a 2-time Editor's Choice Award winner, and a C-Suite Book Club featured best-selling author. Richard is highly acclaimed professional speaker, trainer, and management consultant. Richard Tyler is an award-winning filmmaker and director and is the executive producer of the documentary Maximum Achievement, the Brian Tracy story, as well as the producer of The Soul of Success, which is the Jack Canfield story. The films were Emmy Award nominated and won a Gold Telly Award and Bronze Telly Award, respectively. Welcome to the show, Mr. Tyler. How are you doing today?
I am doing excellent, Sam. I'm so excited to be here with you. Your podcast and the things that you've accomplished personally are really quite amazing. So to take what you've done personally in your business over the years and then launch it into an additional business with the podcast, making things happen for people, getting out there and helping people to understand that they can achieve their dreams, it's quite an honor to be here. Thank you,
I appreciate it. Thank you. You know, I know the times we are in and, people are uncomfortable, but I appreciate you making the trip, getting over here. And I think this show will bring a great value to the listeners, to people who are listening, to people who are watching the video. So I'm honored to be here with you. I'm honored that you have graced us with your presence, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Sam.
I want to talk about something. I know you're a business expert and a sales trainer, right?
Sure.
And of course you wrote some books. So you're an author.
Yeah, 27 of them.
What made you be a director and producer?
Well, that's an excellent question, and I don't often get asked that particular question in the context of the other things that I've done.
Yeah.
Getting involved in films seemed to be the next logical step in delivering the message. One of the goals that I have is to help at least 1 million people improve, that I personally talk with, improve their life, improve their success, and understand success principles. So I've done training, I've written books, and those have touched millions of lives in that venue. But the other thing is that I don't really tell folks this, Sam, but I'm going to share it with you, is I don't really love writing, even though I've done a lot of books. Mm-hmm. But I love doing the training. I love doing the consulting because that's the communication, the verbal communication part. But why did I start to write? I started to write because it allowed me to touch more people than I could touch than in a training session, in a class, even though I've trained thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people over the years. But through books, it allowed many more people to hear success principles. Then as I continued to do books, the next logical thing became, well, why not do films? Why not put together films that take the ideas of success, the principles of success, and highlight those in a way that individuals continue to learn from. Mm-hmm. So after I'm long gone, those films and those books will be around. And so in the film business, the first idea was to document some great successful people. Brian Tracy is one of the ones that we did in film, and Brian in the Maximum Achievement, the Brian Tracy story. And Brian is one of the greatest success coaches of all time. And then, of course, Jack Canfield is the other one, individual that we did a film on, and that's called The Soul of Success. And in The Soul of Success, Jack talks about his life and how he got to where he was in being the co-creator of Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Yeah.
Now, many people don't know this, that they know of the Chicken Soup for the Soul. They've heard of all the different iterations of it. But Chicken Soup for the Soul has sold over 500 million copies. That's a phenomenal impact. It's a huge impact. To be a bestseller, you might sell 500,000 copies, 1 million copies. 500 million copies, nobody's come close to that. And so Canfield has done it. So to pass on ideas about these people and show that they were just regular people like you and me, individuals that had difficult situations in different parts of their life, but they applied themselves after a goal. So that's how I got into the filmmaking business. And then we do a series of short films now. The short films are The Power in You. And we're doing something unique with those, if I could touch on that
Sure.
with you. So these have won multiple awards at this point in time. We're very thrilled with how many awards we've won for these films. But I had the idea that to put a series together of the power in you, meaning within each of us, the power that we had to make a transformative difference in our own lives, in the life of others. And I thought to myself, but having experience, having done 2 documentaries and realizing how full-length documentaries, how long they take to produce and get out and all the work you have to do, I said, it's going to take me a year, maybe 2 years or more to do the Power in You series the way I want to. So I thought to myself, well, how can I do that differently? So what I started, now there'll be a full-length documentary, but what I decided to do was to create short films, mini documentaries, that then we will put together into the feature film when they're all done. We started out with the Power of Words, and that first one won multiple awards, and it's about an individual in a program that we got started helping people with the profound deafness, teaching American Sign Language, right? And so this program was really, really wonderful, and that got recognized as a top film. And then the second one we did wasn't really going to be the second film. The second film is on Hurricane Harvey in the aftermath. It's called The Power of Community. And when Hurricane Harvey hit Houston and hit the greater Gulf Coast area and hit Houston, you know the devastation and things that happen in Houston. And as Americans do, as people tend to do, people came from all over the country to come here and help. So we went to Rosenberg, and we went to Rosenberg in particular. We followed one lady and what happened to her in her life, and people who came from all over the country to help that community and help her with her home. And we filmed that in the Power of Community, and that became the second installment. As a matter of fact, last year that won the top short film, the Best Documentary Short Film of the Year award, among several others. And so we'll put those together, and this series, when it's completed, however many years it takes to complete, will have components in it, Sam, such as we have the Power of Words, the Power of Community, we'll have the Power of Friendship, the Power of Entrepreneurship, the Power of Love, the Power of Relationships. And so each of these will be a mini where a person can watch it by themselves, or when we're done, we'll weave them into the Power in You, which is each of those components. So it's a fun project.
Well, that's good. So is it safe to say that now that we are in the midst of a pandemic that is unprecedented, nobody has ever thought about it, there might be a little short film coming for that one too?
There may be. It's an interesting situation. It could be a short film around that. That would again be the Power of Community and what could happen in there. So we've done that segment. We'd have to take a different take on it. But I believe the impact of this pandemic is really going to be a documentary in itself. Maybe not a short film, but a full-length feature, looking at how the impact goes across entrepreneurs. As a matter of fact, I'm working on an idea, and as soon as I say it on the air, I'm sure someone else will say, okay, I'm going to go do that. But I'm working on an idea. We just have to find the right partners on it to travel the country and talk to entrepreneurs, talk to small business owners and medium-sized business owners, and understand the impact on them and what they've been able to do or what they haven't been able to do to be successful. And I think that's going to be an important story to look back on the history and say, what has this done to America?
So I want to touch this since we are on this pandemic story.
Sure.
I want to talk about a couple of things if you don't mind. Okay, so a couple of different subjects I want to touch. Number one, do you think this pandemic will have effect on people's social skills? Because humans are designed to be social beings.
Sure.
Okay. And now that we are working from home, people are self-isolating. What do you think? What kind of effect will it have on people, to their social skills or mental being?
I think it's a great question. I think you've got two kinds of things that are going to happen in there, Sam. Some people, because they've been quarantined, because they've been locked down, because they've been told they can't get out and do things, the more of that's released, the more that they're going to go out and be engaged with people socially constantly. Yeah. Because they're going to say, I got to get back to people. We're actually seeing that with business protests and so forth. Now, that's a little bit more about survival, but some of that is about being social creatures, as you talked about. There's people who will fall into the middle ground, and my big fear is the people who are going to fall into the ground, the section that you're talking about, which is they're not going to want to socially engage at all. They're going to want to stay away from people. They're going to not be able to, through fear. It's not going to be that they can't. It won't be that there won't be a way to handle it. What it's going to be is that they're so fearful of something that's going to happen to them that they're going to stay away entirely. And that fear, once it's embedded, takes a very, very, very long time to go away. And in reality, part of that is because of how things have gotten handled. We're looking at how there have been lockdowns, how business has been done, how media has covered in certain aspects, things, and made it as frightening as possible. So that fear gets built into people, and for some people it will never go away. For some it'll take years, and hopefully for most of us it'll only be a short period of time.
We have a lot of things in common. I mean, and as the interview goes, I'm going to find a lot of things that we do have in common, because in my sales training or sales meeting to my managers, I told them there are three kinds of people, and you basically said the same thing. There's three kinds of people. One that really don't care, one that is they care but they're medium, and the other one who are really fearful and they're going to self-isolate for a very long time. They don't want to get out. So
sure.
I just touched it briefly, but very, we have that's a same kind of pattern of thought that I'm thinking.
Some won't get out, and it will entirely change their life.
Yes.
Not necessarily for the better.
No,
they won't want to
better.
leave. They won't want to engage in social circumstances. They won't maybe see family members. So we'll have to do all we can to help that. And even when there are treatments, and if a vaccine ever comes along, that fear is embedded, and then it trickles over into other areas of their life.
I was talking to somebody, who basically was who grew up around the Great Depression time,
Sure.
and they were telling me that this thing is gonna affect some people in a way that the Great Depression did. When people who grew up during Great Depression time, they became really thrifty with their money. They did not want to buy anything nicer. They didn't want to spend a lot of stuff because they were growing around that time. Right after Great Depression, right after that was World War II. So, they had that stretch of,
You're right.
that time. Even, they were living in that fear that today is there, tomorrow it will be gone. I mean, you got to think about it. Even Wrigley, gum was on ration. We were talking about that way, and so they said there will be some people who will hoard onto things and hold on to materialistic thing and will not buy, new things
Sure.
that they were used to, and it will change the nature, the whole nature of their being. And what do you think about that?
Well, I think they're right. When you think back, the difference with the Great Depression and then recessions that came after it is that, yes, it lasted over a long period of time, and it impacted a lot of people. But we've already hit the unemployment level that occurred during the Great Depression, and that took years to get there. Mm-hmm. We've already hit that because of a total economic shutdown. Mm-hmm. We've never turned off the entire economy before. So that impact about people of going over a long period of time and not having anything new made them have value, made them hold on to things. That you can say, okay, well, thrift, as long as it doesn't go too far, is a good thing, right? At the same time, what we're talking about here, what wasn't coupled in the Great Depression or any of the recessions that came after that, is the fear of life. In other words, maybe a person was fearful that they might not have enough to eat or stay warm, but they didn't have a fear that engaging with another human being might kill them, right? And that they have to stay away from other people. And that's a whole different aspect. But I do believe that it will affect how people were there. I can tell you a quick little story about that, as a matter of fact. My grandmother grew up during the Great Depression, and my grandmother was a wonderful, wonderful human being, one of the kindest people you would ever meet. She never really raised her voice or yelled or gave me a hard time about anything as a kid growing up. And we grew up in my grandmother's household. And so one day, and she used to have these little doilies that were, these little lacy things that you would put on. She would take them out of the closet and put them on her dresser from time to time, but they never stayed there. She would always put them away. And then one day I was, and I always thought that was odd, but I was a kid. So it was her home, and we were there, and I said, look, that's what she wants. I never really asked her about it. But then what happened one day is, back then, soap detergent boxes and things like this, you could get all kinds of stuff in them. You could even get towels, right? So we'd gotten they were not high quality towels, but our towel collection, we weren't wealthy. Our towel collection came from these boxes that you would get, and, green stamps and other kinds of things that were available. So they didn't last long. So one day I was using a towel, and it tore. Right? I was, maybe 8 years old or something like that. And it was all raggedy anyway, right? And with strings coming off of, you've seen them. So in this case, the towel tore, and I thought to myself, this is nuts. I'm going to go get a towel out of the closet. And I knew that there were some nice towels a couple of shelves up, right? So because I'd seen them. And I didn't know why they were up there, but I couldn't reach them before. But I got a little stool, and I got up there, and I pulled the towel down, and I started using that towel. And I went out to my grandmother wrapped in a towel, and I said, Nan, this towel is great. Now remember, she's never really yelled at me in my life. She was the sweetest woman ever, right? She really got angry with me. What are you doing? Why did you touch that? And she went on, and I won't go on with the whole story, but it went on for a couple of minutes. She was so upset with me, so upset that her face got, beat red and so forth. And I came to understand that she bought those towels over time. It took her a long time to save up for them, and she didn't intend to use them. I used it, and so I now made them used. Now, the impact of that is from the Great Depression, because during the Depression, she was one of many children, and she had to leave school, never really learned to read and write except for her name and a few things. And she could sign her name and do a few other things, but not very much. She never had anything new.
Yeah.
And so as she got older, even though she wasn't wealthy, a factory worker, she would save her money and buy something new and put it aside so that she would have something new. And that affected her whole life. And so she was mad. Now, later she apologized for that, for getting upset with me. But it still impacted her whole life, that we would use stuff that was worn out and beat up and so forth because she wanted to keep those things. So that
new things.
It was more important to her to have something that she knew was hers and new than it was to use it.
Yes. I mean, and that's
a psychological impact for her whole life.
Exactly. And there's a lot of older people who don't want to buy anything new. They have the same truck. They live in the same house. They have the same furniture. And that's what I'm afraid of, because, that third kind of people that I talked about, will it have an impact on that?
I believe it will. I think you're on target.
So let me ask you a question about, while we're on this pandemic subject, entrepreneurs who have businesses. A lot of these businesses, business people, they basically have to reinvent every day as it goes on, especially in the beginning. Sure. In mid-March, when things were changing daily. Every day there'll be something different. And then comes April, and everything is a different story. And
they were told they would be able to get their business open and so forth, and then it got pushed. It's going to be a couple of weeks. Then it's longer and longer and longer. Some places are still talking about they won't even be able to open until the summertime.
Exactly. And then businesses that are, we are in Houston. We are blessed in Texas, which is another subject. But there's places in Chicago and California, and these businesses are still closed.
Yeah.
And the toll that is taken on some of these business owners, they worked hard all their lives, to do that. And then the PPP was introduced, which is a great thing, right? But some of these businesses only have 8 weeks to use that PPP, but the business is still closed. And so I don't know if they're going to have enough time. But some entrepreneurs are coming up with, okay, well, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do this. And they're all going on, as the days passes by, right? What do you think, what will your message be to some of these people who basically find themselves helpless and not with the clue right now?
Yeah. Well, that's a deep question. And we could spend several hours just on that discussion alone. And you hit so many great points in there, because many of these businesses, and even here in Houston, we're blessed in that we've opened up some things more, but there's still a lot of businesses closed. In Texas is hit with a double hit because of the low prices of oil going way down. Yeah. So that's impacted a lot of businesses and so forth. So you've got a double compound thing hitting us there. As far as the businesses go, they're not going to be able to last the length of time that the 8 weeks that the PPE is for a couple of reasons. First of all, when the government thinks about small businesses, and this is any government, whether it's city, whether it's federal, whether it's state or whatever, they think about small businesses. Even if you look at the guidelines, they say 500 and under, but the government thinks 500, right? Right. Most small businesses are nowhere near 500. They're 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 or 15 or 20. You get to be a medium-sized business if you have 50, 100, 150 employees and so forth. And so those businesses, they're good businesses, they're honorable people, and they're operating on cash flow. Entrepreneurs and small businesses are usually underfunded. They usually are undersourced, meaning that they don't have enough support systems available to them, and they operate on cash flow. Now, some people, economists, would sit back and say, and financial people say, well, you have to have all this money, you should have 6 months worth of income and so forth. most of those people aren't running small businesses.
Yes.
It's very difficult for a small business to have 6 months worth of cash on hand. The nature of the business itself, and they don't necessarily have to, except for when you come up with something like this.
Yes.
But the nature of that business is to have individuals work, do a job, supply a product or a service to their customers, get paid for that. Then they pay their employees, they pay themselves a little bit, they work on a tight margin, and then they move on. That cash flow is what generates the American economy. It's not, yes, there's big companies out there doing great things, but it's the small companies and the constant cash flow and churn of money and for goods and services that stimulates the economy. So, and that's 80% of the businesses. Now, we hear that the small businesses are the engine of the economy from many experts, but what they don't understand, most of them, is they've never run small businesses.
Yeah.
The people who are talking about we have to stay closed till summertime in every aspect and we have to wait till we have a vaccine till anybody could work, they work in the government. And guess what? They got a paycheck.
They got a paycheck.
Or they're on a network news program and they're getting a paycheck, right? They're not the ones who have done what you just said, spent 20, 30, 40, 10 years, whatever it was, to build a business up and to have it going, to put some employees, to put their kids through college, to buy a home. And now all of that is in a position to be devastated by. If we look at historically, Sam, something that happened, and I think that this is very important to put in context, because the context gives us, if we look back at history, we can see some things. We've got the Great Depression to look back to, and we've got recessions to look back to. Well, this, I believe, is worse than most of those, all right, because of the way that it's done and because of the fast impact that is widespread across the whole economy. Now, if we look at the last 3 recessions alone, the Harvard Business Review did a great study. And what they found was that after that, when the recession was done, 17% of the businesses, now what they looked at was the 4,700 publicly traded companies. So these were top companies. They're not a mom and pop. So we can assume that the mom and pop, the solopreneur, the individual gig worker, they're going to be impacted way, way, way more than the 4,700 large publicly traded companies would be. 17% never survived at all. They either went bankrupt or they were acquired or they had to go private. Somebody bought them and took them private. Now, so that's a huge chunk into the economy. We're already seeing, you and I talked on the telephone, and you were telling me about some businesses you heard were going into bankruptcy. There's so many large corporations right now going into bankruptcy, let alone what the small ones are. We'll hear about the small ones later on. The big ones make the news, but the small ones are going to be more devastating because it's going to ripple through the entire economy. If we look at the survivors of those past recessions, what we find is that 80% of those individuals, 3 years after it was over, had not gotten back to the growth rate that they had prior to that downturn in the economy. And then if we go past that and we say, okay, of those survivors, 40% of them 3 years later still hadn't gotten back to their profit level and their revenue levels before. So that's devastating. Many of them just never got there, not just 3 years later, 5 years later, 6 years later. And we look at, they churn through cycles, people buy them. Look at the JCPenney's of the world who have gone in and out of bankruptcy. Look at the companies like that. And then the mom and pops, they don't have access to that kind of cash. They're not going to get a group of investors who are going to come in and say, okay, look, we'll bail you out, restructure your business. Who's going to restructure a sandwich shop? Who's going to restructure a boutique, right? A little boutique. Who's going to restructure a small dry cleaner? They're not going to do that. Those businesses are just going to fail, and then those people find themselves in a difficult time. Now, the positive aspect is that about 9% of the businesses that did survive, and it's a small positive, but it's a positive, 9% flourished, right, after things were done. Now, those 9% did things differently than some of the other places of business. Now, it won't work for everybody. Each individual is a different set of circumstances, but the business has to say to itself, what can I do to survive? Well, they can't be too defensive. In other words, if they pull in too much, they miss the business opportunities as people are coming back, right? They take their name out of the press. They do no type of advertising. They do no type of promotion, no type of marketing. They may not be able to spend the money they were spending on advertising before, but how can they do it now less expensively? Can it be through social media? Can it be through podcasts? Can it be through video clips that they shoot themselves even and send out to their customer list, right? They can't be too aggressive either. On the opposite side, they're going to have to strategize and plan to make sure that the money that they have, they're spending wisely and using it in a way where they're going to get an ROI, a return on investment. And they have to calculate what that potential return is in advance. You know, when you have a lot of cash flow, when a business is burning and churning, you got cash flow. When you have a lot of cash flow, Sam, you know that covers a lot of mistakes, right?
A lot of them.
You can cover up a lot of mistakes with cash flow. But right now, there is no cash flow. Consequently, you can't cover up the mistakes. So you have to, you can't be too defensive, but you can't be too aggressive either. The aggressiveness has to be well thought out planning and strategy. You've got to have a balance. Now, one of the other things that they need to look to do, Sam, is I got a chance to tour your place here, and you guys are efficiency experts, it seems like, right? I mean, you're doing a real good job with how you utilize people and resources and all of those things. And that's what small businesses and all businesses have to do. They have to become much more operationally efficient. Mm-hmm. Again, that cash flow allowed people to not be operationally efficient. But without it, you've got to be operationally efficient. What steps can I take out of the process? What layers can I get rid of between me and my customer that makes it easier for the customer to do business with me? What other ways can I contact the customer to make that efficient in the operation? And if they're able to, now there'll be a few small businesses, medium-sized businesses, even large, that more so large, are in a position to be able to take advantage of a few things. They do have some cash reserves. Maybe they've built them up over the years. What I mean by take advantage of those is often there become opportunities that are available that wouldn't have been available otherwise.
Yeah.
They're able to purchase property that they might not have been able to purchase at a better price than before. They're able to get buildings. They're able to get partners. They have to look for partners on certain things that may add value to their products and services that they may not have gone into that, but there's a partner that could do that who may not have been open to the idea of a partnership before. Mm-hmm. But when you've got several people who are in difficult times, pooling some resources together and ideas together and abilities to get to the customer is a wonderful thing to do. So all of that becomes important. I think most of all what they have to do is one of the things they have to do is make sure that fear doesn't stop them. Fear is the great debilitator. But it can be a positive for us or a negative. In other words, fear is a catalyst action. You know, we have a survival instinct that is fight or flight. If we run from everything, we'll certainly survive, but we won't grow.
Yeah.
Right? So if we take calculated risks, if we plan, if we strategize, and not allow the fear to hamper us where we do nothing but take action. There's a lot of people sitting around right now at home who aren't back at business, and they haven't got their business up and running yet. And they're looking and they're saying, I don't know what to do. I'm just devastated by this. And they are. But that fear and that lack of doing anything is going to be a killer for them because they're going to be so far behind the curve, they're just burning time. That time should be being used to strategize, to contact people, to rethink their business, to remanufacture how they do things in their mind, look for different ways to balance their business, to add new product lines, to eliminate product lines. Suppose you got some operations or you got some products that you're carrying that are not very efficient. I was very impressed when we went into what is one of your rooms and you were showing me, you look at the products that you have up there, you got the rate of sale, and you look at them for a period of time, which a lot of businesses don't do, and evaluate, is this a good product or not?
Yeah.
So we should constantly be doing that. So right now is a good time to say, are we offering products and services that have a good return? Do customers really want these, right? And can we be more efficient in what we're offering? So being able to do that is going to be critical. I know you got a question you want to get in there. So before I get on to the next point,
I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next thing that you want to look at what folks are doing, social impact is going to have in the remaking of their business. This word social impact, unfortunately, is going to be stuck in our heads for a long period of time. How does social impact really affect their business, right? So if you look at, we could pick any business, but let's pick a restaurant as an example. And people, I was at a place the other day and got some takeout, and they say they can open their dining room, but they can open to 20% capacity right now. And that's okay. That's a staggered rollout. But a staggered rollout can't last for long because guess what? At 20% of capacity, I'm actually better off not having customers in my place. I'm better being able to just do the to go. Yeah, because to operate and open at 20% capacity, when a restaurant or a business is built, the square footage they take, the things they're going to do, the services they provide are calculated on a certain number of customers coming in and doing things. So if I'm at 20% of capacity into my business is all I can let in, people are not going to sit there all day and wait. So they're not going to go to that business. And if I have 20% in, now I have to bring in additional people to wait on those 20%, to wash the dishes, to do the various different things. You cannot operate on that for very long.
And then
Same
there's the shortages and spoilage and all that stuff.
That's exactly right, Sam. You got spoilage, you can't predict what the food levels are going to be. So you have those types of impact. But there's another kind of impact. What about the energy of the place?
Yeah.
I remember this restaurant that I used to go to, and in this one location, at this restaurant, whenever you went in there, probably in a location there'd been four restaurants, right, before a successful one opened up. And every time I would go in, either the food was, a new place, the food wasn't good enough or whatever. The one place, the food was really good. It was a Mexican restaurant. Food was really good. And the person I was with, I said, "Oh, I really like this food." I said, "Yeah, unfortunately, this business isn't going to survive." He said, "How can you make a determination that it's not going to survive?"
I'm curious too.
How can the food? You like the food? Yeah, the food is good, but they're not going to make it. Why? There's no energy here. Their tables are so far apart from each other that there is no excitement within the place of business between the employees and the people. People don't come out to eat to have stuff that's not even as exciting as what they have at home, right? Now, that doesn't mean that people have to be on top of each other, but that social distancing of tables and the movement away saps energy out. I'm reminded of, I grew up in Rhode Island, and I'm reminded of the hockey team that was there, the Rhode Island Reds. And the Rhode Island Reds were in the American Hockey League, and at one time, the American Hockey League was the minor leagues for the National Hockey League. Most of that doesn't exist now. Those teams are long gone. But the Rhode Island Reds were the oldest hockey team in existence at the time. And whenever they had a hockey game, now this was when I was a kid, so it was many, many years ago. Whenever they had a game in the old Rhode Island Auditorium, the place was packed. It held about 7,000 people, if I remember right, 7,500 people. And it was packed, and it was noisy and boisterous and a ruckus in there, and people were crazy, and they loved the game, right? And because it was always packed, the powers that be decided, well, we're going to build a much bigger place to accommodate more people. Well, that's what they did. They built an arena that held almost 15,000 people, right? The only problem was they never did market research as how many people would go to the game, right? Small team, minor league team in a small state. Providence isn't the hugest city in the world.
Yeah. Now
it's a good-sized city.
It's an empty stadium.
Yeah, and so guess what? Now they had the same 7,000 people showed up. It's not at the beginning, oh, wow, we got this great new stadium. The same 7,000 people showed up. But now, many years later, we have a new term for it. They were practicing social distancing. Because 7,000 people in a 15,000 seat arena, there's spaces all over the place.
All over the place.
What never happened, Sam, was they never got energy. Because of the people away from each other, that same excitement, enthusiasm, power that was in the game, the electrification of being there, right? You just didn't feel it. So then what happened was those 7,000 people became 6,500, then 6,000, then 5,500, and pretty soon, guess what? The oldest hockey team in existence went bankrupt.
So now let me ask you a question, because since you mixed it with the sports analogy, first of all, I want to talk about energy of the place, right? I'm a strong believer that you should always have an energy, and we always talk about when we have our sales meeting, hey, you got to make sure you do whatever you can to get that first guest sold. The first person that walks in the door on any given day, sell it and celebrate it, because that will give that energy and create that atmosphere where everybody wants to do it. And if you can do it to the first 3 customers that you sell to, then all of a sudden you've created this electrifying energy that will get your whole day going better.
And what it does is it gets people with the psychology, the other people who are holding back, hey, if they can do it, I can do it.
The momentum.
And that creates some momentum and some energy in the place. Absolutely, absolutely right. Just no difference when you're in a place and somebody's utilizing something, tasting something, buying something, whatever, and somebody else says, oh, if they're getting that, I'm going to get that too. It's a social acceptance.
Exactly. And I mean, so same thing with the tasting. I'm in furniture business. I always got to say the furniture analogy. When you see one customer on it and they are very interested, the other customer who's passing by, they automatically look at that sofa or their bedroom set too.
Absolutely. Because one of the things that, we have all types of different buying motives, but one of them is social acceptance. In other words, people want to do something. The people who don't want to take risks, they want to do something that somebody else is doing because they feel that that's a good thing to do and it's safer for them. So when they see somebody else sitting on it or enjoying it or whatever, they think, okay, they can put themselves in that position, and it lowers the risk. They're not individuals that want to go out and get the new thing per se, unless somebody else is doing it first, and they'll have some psychology.
And energy is so important, right? It may be in business, may be in sports, may it be a party, whatever, right? A party without energy is a dull party, right?
Sure.
It's everybody snoozing. So energy is so important, and it's also, so since you touched the sports team, I want to talk about the sporting events, because right now there's no sports.
Right.
But NFL is saying they're going to start their season. MLB has said now they're going to start their season in July. And I mean, so I don't get it, if people are social distancing, because teams win because of energy. Seattle Seahawks went on that great ride because of the 12th man in Seattle.
Sure.
Loudest stadium. Home teams win because their home teams are cheering for them and the stadiums are louder and all that other stuff. So, it's fans are really important in the team. But what do you think? What is your opinion of people when they're not sitting close to each other? And
well, it's an interesting thing. I gave you the example with the Rhode Island Reds, and so that's what I think on that. But if you look, sports are unique, something unique in this capacity. They could survive with slight modification to their business. In other words, sports teams could play with no people at all and broadcast, which is what they've done. They've got
money.
TV contracts and so forth, and people can gather in their homes with people that they're safe. So it changes the business model some, but they can survive without ever having a person in the stand. They might end up finding out that in some sports that may work for them, depending upon what it is. So that's certainly possible to have that happen. Now, but the dynamics, if you just put a few people in the stands, that actually makes it tougher for the people who are at home watching the game. Because if I see nobody there, I'm concentrating on the game. But if there's a few people spread out and they're so far socially distanced, then it becomes, wow, this isn't so exciting. So what happens, the lack of enthusiasm in the stands now becomes a lack of enthusiasm for the viewer. If nobody's there, at least you can get away with that lack of enthusiasm. The interesting thing that happens with sports too is that some of the teams that win because of their fans that are there, right? Now, they could make this up. They could somehow have simulcast in where people are at home and they dial in and their sounds, they make sounds and it goes through the stadium. There's technology and ways to do that. But some teams that win, think of some of the underdog teams. Think of some of the individuals who were gone. They weren't going to win. But the fans were so excited, as you talked about, the people the players got excited. They got electrified. Yes. And so an underdog steps up to a higher capacity. It's very difficult to do that. In other words, that belief from the fans, their fans at their place, that charges them up, gives them the will to continue on in difficult circumstances. When that's gone, then the team that has the best players is going to tend to win long as, and so you'll see very few underdogs reaching up and winning in that capacity.
So that's it's a good perspective and good spin onto that. Now I want to go back to what you said about business and entrepreneurs who are taking their voice out of market, such as advertising or just going silent about that and everything. And I think it's very important to keep your voice, because when things go back to normal, you have to start all over again, because you have taken your brand, you have taken your branding away, you have taken your voice out of there, and people have short-term memories.
Sure.
And I mean, you have to build this thing. So what is your advice? I mean, you said you covered a little bit, but what will be your one advice about advertising and about market, keeping your voice in the market?
Well, it goes back to the first principle we talked about, or the first two, is don't be too defensive, but don't be too aggressive. As far as keeping your voice in the marketplace goes, history has proven. As a matter of fact, the businesses that flourished, that I told you after the last three recessions, that only 9% flourished, that not only did they cut inefficient operations, but many of them actually increased their number of employees. So during that time, they had more people to be able to work when people came back in, and they used that for training and development time and so forth. So that's a good investment. When it comes to the advertising and marketing piece, you have to look at where you're spending that money and how you're spending it, and saying, how can I effectively keep my name in front of people? Because you're right, we have short-term memories. And in advertising and marketing, the first book I ever wrote was on marketing. And Smart Business Strategies, the Guide to Small Business Marketing Success. And if you take your name completely away, people forget about you, and you lose what's called top of mind or front of mind awareness. So when things are happening again, they're not thinking of you, right? So what you have to do is say, how can I stay in touch with my clients and let them know that I'm here and I want to survive? I want to do business with them. I want them to be pleased with what's going on. Now, most small to medium-sized businesses, larger businesses have some bigger budgets, but most small to medium-sized businesses don't effectively communicate and regularly communicate with their customers now, right? So they have to go back and say, how can I do that? What's my customer base, and how do I get into those, get to those people? That can be through online ads. It can be direct to the customer if they have a database. Now, don't inundate the people. I have some people who I've done business with, and I literally get 10 emails a day from them, right? At that point, you've got top of mind awareness, but it's not because of a pleasant thing, right? Yeah. It's too much, right? So say to yourself, unless you've got an offer that is time sensitive and you're making them aware of that, and those would be very limited sets of circumstances. So you've got to stay in touch. Use your email. I would also use the time to develop some apps, right? Now, apps used to be very expensive to develop an app. But as a matter of fact, my technology company does that, but there's many other good ones out there. And in developing an app, what you're doing is you're creating a way to get in touch with a customer and communicate with them. If they're already in your email list, you can contact them through the email and tell them about the app. And now you've got real estate on their phone. That's very important real estate. And if that app allows you to use, if you designed in such a way where you can send them text messages of something that's going on, and they accept that, that opening a text message happens 70% of the time when it's from somebody, compared to an email, which is only 8% of the time. So you're looking at ways. Now that's it doesn't mean you give up email. It means you have to be strategic with the email. But realize that if you can get in touch with the customer that way, that's a very powerful tool because they want to hear it. I have this app that gives me, tells me about when there's specials at a particular place. And I don't get them all the time, but I get something that says, hey, go over here, you get 20% off, 15% off, or we're introducing this new product. I love that bit of information because it would have got buried somewhere in my email, right?
One thing that we did as business, when this whole thing happened, and we had to pull back a little advertisement because we were unsure what was going to happen. In my business, we went to the phone.
That's a great thing to do.
Phone. I understand salespeople, they hate touching their phone because it probably weighs a ton, right?
Yeah.
But so that's what we did.
Salespeople have been social distancing themselves from the phone for years, right?
They hate it. They hate to pick up that phone. It's
not. Let's be clear for the audience. It's not that they hate picking up the phone. You and I would both say they hate picking up the phone, but it's not that they hate picking up the phone. They usually don't know what to say, so it's awkward for them, and they hate the potential rejection. They take it personal, right? And because of that, then that fear stops them.
Yeah. So what we did is, and I would like to share this since we were talking about it because it worked for me.
It's your show. You can share whatever you want.
Yeah, because it worked for me. So we made them call the customers, but not for a sale. Just want to let them know that, hey, I just want to check in on you, making sure everything is okay. We gave them a script. Just listen, this is so and so. Checking on you and your family. Make sure everybody's okay. Our stores are open in case you're looking for something in particular. Listen, if there's anything we can do for you, don't hesitate to call us.
Here's the two winning parts about that formula. You're brilliant to do that, Sam. The two winning parts are, three winning parts is one, that you took the action to reach out. But you had to have the information on the customer to do that, right?
Yeah.
So if you've got that customer base, then you've got to be able to reach back to them. The second thing that you did was you created a script or a presentation so that the people were comfortable making the call. They knew the purpose of the call and what to say. And the third thing you did was you told the customer, we're here for you if you should need something, right? And that just touched base with them. And so those three things become brilliant. But if you do two of them and you leave the script out, you don't have the same success rate.
Yeah.
Because people will stumble through the process and it won't come.
A lot of people don't know what to say.
That's right. They don't know what to say. And that's okay. That's, they get on the phone and they don't know. That's why professionals develop sales presentations or business presentations. That's what marketing is all about. You don't see too many people winging commercials and so forth. They're developed into something. And that touches on something that's very important. That's that scripted presentation or modular presentation that you give them touches on professionalism. Now, one of the things that's going to be important for survival and recovery is professionalism. So that professionalism comes across in a lot of different ways. Is your business clean? When people come in, does it look dirty? Does it look like, because today a dirty place or a sloppy place, when someone walks into it, if they come back to your business, that place is going to look to them, it's not just going to be dirty. What they would have forgiven before as dirty and sloppy is now going to be not sanitary. And I could get sick from being in here. And so you may lose that customer forever. But there's another area to talk about when it comes to professionalism. And that's the way the people who work in the business look. I would tell you that over the last 15 years or so, and it seems to have accelerated, that many people in business are sloppy. They don't have a professional look. They're unkempt. Their clothes are wrinkled. They don't have any coordination of what they're doing. They just don't keep themselves looking good because what the heck, it's a casual environment. We do whatever we want. But every single study shows when it comes to people looking to invest their money, they want to invest their money and their time with people who are professional, right? I did a great example of this a number of years ago. I went on a beer truck with people selling beer, right? In a suit. Now, you would not do that in a normal place of business, but I wanted to illustrate that you could have a powerful impact. We sold way more beer on that day with me engaging with the customers in a suit than had I just gone in dressed super casual. Now, you can be delivering beer and be in a uniform, but that uniform, that could be a certain color scheme or whatever, but it has to be clean. It has to be neat. I was in a coffee shop, and there was a couple of people working in there, and one of the people, now people will say, well, wait a minute, Richard, are you being fair? I mean, is it a good assessment of an individual if they're just sloppy and wrinkled and, they don't seem to take good care of themselves? Are you being fair to them? Nobody ever stamped any of us on the butt when we were born with the stamp that says life is going to be fair to you and not to you. Yeah. Life is not fair. If it was, we wouldn't have a pandemic right now. Yeah. Right? So life is not fair. We have to make the best of that circumstance and say, what are the psychological impacts that happen to people when they're, what goes on in their head, in other words. And so when we look at somebody who's sloppy, well, maybe we get away with that except for when there's a problem. Now a person who's sloppy looking, maybe they're not sanitized. Maybe they don't care about stuff. So what I can get away with, I see two people in this coffee shop I go to, and one of the guys is really sloppy. I mean, I don't know why. It looks like the clothes come out of the dryer. They're totally wrinkled up. Mm-hmm. And then he takes them and wads them up even more, right? And puts them on. And it's, he always puts his cap on in a goofy kind of sloppy way and so forth. And everything about him looks unkempt. He's a nice guy. I like the guy, right? He's a wonderful guy. But if something goes wrong with the drink, the customer then says, well, wait a minute. This guy's sloppy. He was sloppy with preparing my drink, too. Exactly. Now, there's another guy in there, and he must get the stuff out of the dryer and iron everything. Mm. He's always perfect. So psychologically, it's unfortunate, but that person's going to get more latitude. Yes. So it's the same thing in our business. We have to make sure that the image we put forth in front of the customers, we got to clean up our parking lots. We got to spend a few dollars and put the line down for parking that's appropriate, not so close that people can't get out of their car because they don't want to bang the next car door. Keep the junk out of there when people walk in. Make sure your people have a clean professional appearance. Yes. You can decide for your business what that is, but you understand what a clean professional business looks like and a clean professional person. Because without that, when somebody comes in, they're immediately going to say, I'm not going to come back here. And Richard, you touched this parking lot thing, right? And I thought I was the only person who said the parking lot needs to be clean. But when a patron walks out of their car and there's a McDonald's bag laying in your parking lot, and a lot of business owners and business employees and business managers don't think that it's their responsibility to make sure they check their parking lot, They need to understand that when that customer walks out of there,
in normal times, okay, I'm talking about pre-COVID, they already had this mindset,
Sure.
right? Today, post-COVID, or while this COVID is going on, this all of a sudden that place is unsanitary.
That's right.
And I can get sick. So I agree totally
Absolutely.
with what you said.
Well, remember, I said early on, we're talking about things with cash flow. You can get away with a lot of mistakes. All right. Well, it's no different than when times are good. People are willing to overlook some of these things
Yes.
because they're willing to overlook it. But when times are tighter, they're no longer willing to overlook those things because fear is now controlling a lot of their thoughts. So you have to pay attention to the parking lot, the place of business. You're in the furniture business, and one of the things that I found in there, as a matter of fact, I've had clients, a lot of retail clients over the years. We have clients in all kinds of industries that they go from startups, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, all the way up to the Global 100. So I've dealt in all kinds of industries with all kinds of sizes of business. We had this one retail client, and we went around to some of their retail stores, and as we were going by, I said, I want to go by at night. So I went by at night, and I looked at all of the lights in their signage, the places that didn't have the signs on, right? The bulbs were burned out or something there. And I said, okay, now every one of the management people in these facilities where these are out needs to be written up. Now the owner of the CEO of the thing says, you want us to write us up people for no light bulbs? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Because there's a biblical principle that says if you can't get it right on the little things, why would you be trusted with something big? You spend $60,000 for a sign and you got lights out in it. Now, granted, if it just happened that moment, that's why you get a write-up and you're not getting dismissed, right? But that's your billboard to the world. Make sure your billboard to the world, we're talking about branding and stuff, people are driving by and they're seeing things. Make sure your billboard to the world is good so that when they come in there, they see that. Now, I've been in a lot of furniture stores over the years. You know, I have many manufacturers in that industry that are clients as well as retailers over the years. And I go through their showrooms and I say, let's take a walk through your showroom. Walk through a showroom and I stop pulling the drawers open. So what are you doing? I'm looking. What are you looking for?
If salespeople put something in there.
I'm looking to see screws and packets and things and stuff that have been shoved in here because when a customer opens it up, this is what they're going to see. And when they see this junk in here that I see right here, what they say is, how are they taking care of the stuff in the warehouse? How are they going to make sure that the stuff comes in? You yourself know this, that if a delivery goes perfect and it's on time and you get there early, if the driver bumps a wall or something, most customers, don't worry about it. But make that delivery 1 hour late. And all of a sudden, they're watching you, they're upset, they're scoped, and the same piece of furniture that was acceptable 30 minutes early is now going back to the warehouse, right? And you got a problem on your hands because they're looking over it with a fine-tooth comb. That's natural because something has been triggered in us to say, wait a minute, we better check this out because they're not living up to their word someplace else.
Yeah.
One of the big impacts of COVID is going to be people looking around and say, hey, they're not living up to my idea of what would be safe, what would be appropriate, what would be clean, or what would be professional. So there's a lot of stuff that you have to do to look to that. I would say that one thing you want to pay attention to, Sam, or businesses need to pay attention to, is that if you have less customers, which you're going to have, some places are going to have for a while. Now, the only people who might not have less customers once they open are barbershops and hairstylists, right?
And nail salons.
They could, but the barbershops and hairstylists, and maybe nail salons, they could operate once they're open round the clock. Because if you thought people were in line and they were going crazy to get toilet paper, right? Well, now, what happens when you got 300 million people looking to get a haircut?
Yes.
So that will fill those businesses up, but for most of them, they're not going to have that. So what the business is going to have to pay attention to do is to increase they're going to have to, let me back up. They're going to have to constantly work on training their people on customer service and sales. Not sales where it's just product knowledge. I'm talking about real sales skills and real customer service skills where they're learning skills and techniques to engage the customer better. Because in order to survive with lower customer counts and to even thrive, you're going to have to raise your average sale, which means whatever the customer was getting from you, they're going to have to get more. And in order to do that, they're going to have a good communication to them on why it's in their best interest to invest in more products or more services with you. The other thing that they're going to have to do is they're going to have to get increased return customers. In other words, the people who are coming in, they're going to have to get those people to come in or do business with them more frequently. That's if it's retail, but if it's B2B, it's the same thing. They're going to have to engage the services of those people larger. There's so many B2B businesses where the company sells a product or a service, yet many parts of the company have one division is using it. Many parts of the company don't even know it exists. And they have other products and services that could be sold through their company, but they never make contact on those particular things. So that's that increasing the average sale and getting return customers. They're going to have to shorten the sales cycle or shorten the length of time it makes the customer to make a decision. The longer it takes for a customer to make a decision on whether they want something or not want something, the less likely the decision is to occur positively. In other words, they're more likely to say no. And the less profitable it is, because the longer it takes to make the decision, the more time that was spent with them on the decision. So it's inherently less profitable. So it doesn't make sense to do that. So they got to look for ways to shorten that the time it makes the customer make a decision. I go into this one place. I'll give you a perfect example. I went into a place the other day. It was a restaurant. And they have this billboard up there. Mm-hmm. They've got great products up there, a lot of products. It is so confusing to place an order.
It's too many.
It's too many, but it's in such a way where I'm like, oh my God, I can't put this together. There's people behind me. The heck with it. I'm just not going to come in.
Yeah.
I may get the simplest thing and then you don't go back. So it becomes confusing. Make it where it's easy to make the decision for the customer, right? Yeah, you can have customizations, but create some packages of things that allow the customer to say, this is an easy decision. I can make this.
Keep it simple.
And that's exactly right. And they're going to have to do something that salespeople hate doing as well, but businesses seem to hate doing, is they're going to have to get referral customers. When a customer is referred to you, to any business, it comes with what I call the halo effect. In other words, that halo sits over that business because somebody else who they trusted and admired said this was a good company to do business with. They're clean, they're professional. In this environment, they're sanitized, they have good products, they have good services, they'll stand behind them, they take care of their customers, whatever that halo effect is for that particular business. So that referral business has a much higher percentage of a shorter decision cycle and likelihood of doing business than someone who you've never done business with before. But many people are not comfortable at asking for referrals. Just like you had a script for the telephone call, you have to develop a presentation so that how do people ask for referrals? And why would a person want to give a referral? What are the appropriate referral programs? What could they get out of it? Right? By being a referral customer for you, there can be advantages. So that's one of the places where people can remake part of their business. How do they create a referral program? How do they create a repeat customer program? Now, and they have to be ones that are workable. Southwest Airlines has a great repeat customer program, you fly more, a bonus program, customer program. You fly this many types, you get a free flight. Mm-hmm. It's not complicated. But I go to other places and they give me stamps and they give me things that have to be punched. So some places I have like 25 cards from with one punch on it.
And the punching cards you can't keep them in your wallet.
And you can't keep them in your wallet. There's no easy place to do it. You say, the heck with this, and then you don't use them, and it defeats the purpose. If what you're doing to get your customer to be a frequent customer aggravates the customer, it's counterproductive. Yeah. It's got to be easy and simple. What's a simple way? With technology today, you can track stuff easy through people's phone numbers or other kinds of ways that they're willing to do to say, hey, you did business with us, boom. That's what happens when you go to the grocery store. Some of the grocery stores, your program there, you put your phone number in, and it says, oh, yes, you're part of our, whether it be Reynolds or Kroger or whatever, It registers it to you, and you get whatever the savings happen to be in there. So, and that gives you contact into the database as well. So if you want to get those people to be repeat customers, make your program such where you reward them, where it's very simple and very easy for them to do. And then once they do that, ask them for referral business and let them know what they're going to be able to get to do it. You can do that in a couple of ways. You can do it in an email to them. You can do it in face-to-face. You can do it with some signage in your business that talks about it. Mm-hmm. And you can even do it with a great video clip. Today, it doesn't have to be a professional video shoot. We see people all the time shooting something on an iPhone or something like that. That's good quality stuff compared to what used to be out there. And it only has to be 15 or 20 seconds talking about their referral program and occasionally doing that. That's a very inexpensive way to reach out to their database to do it. Now, if they're not sure how to do it, then they get professional help. They look for a marketeer. They contact someone like us to help them. But in any case, there's ways to do that that's very, very inexpensive. But those four things are critical.
I'm going to stop you right there.
Sure.
If someone is listening to that and they're like, well, I understand referral program, but Richard, what are you talking about? Give me a little example of a referral program, because referral program can be very broad and wide.
Well, the referral program has to be tailored to your particular business. So you're right, it can be. broad and wide. What a referral program in its essence is that if you refer somebody to us to do business, we will reward you in some type of way. That reward may be monetary. That reward may be in some special savings. That reward may be in a home furnishings business. It might be the opportunity to come to a VIP sale that is not open to the general public yet. It can be a money that is built up in a bank for you to be able to utilize on certain products. It can be with loyalty dollars. If you do this and this and this, you get a certain number of loyalty dollars. It has to be tailored to that business, but there's a lot of simple ways to do it. The essence is you've got to be able to say to your customer, we value your business, we want to do business with you, and we appreciate the fact that there's other people out there who want to do business with companies who value their business too. And if you would help us spread that word, we're willing to recognize you for that. You know, there was a great... Stu Leonard's had an interesting program, and it's not so much a referral program, but it was a great branding program, and they may still have it. And what they had was if you shop at Stu Leonard's grocery store, this was a grocery chain up in Connecticut, right? Still is, and they're famous for all the cool stuff that they do. But if you shop at Stu Leonard's, you can get a Stu Leonard's bag, almost like the grocery tote that I gave you today, right? When I came in, you get a Stu Leonard's bag, and wherever you're traveling in the world, take a picture of yourself carrying a Stu Leonard's bag, and we'll put you in our Hall of Fame, and we'll give you something for it. So you can go into a Stu Leonard's grocery store, at least you used to be able to, and you see these pictures, you'd see it in their ads, you'd see Stu Leonard's people. They're in Israel, they're in Mozambique, they're in Iraq, they're in France, wherever they're in Japan, China, wherever it was. Here's my Stu Leonard's bag, and it's a picture. So now their face gets put up on a billboard in a place. It gets in some of their ads. It gets promoted. They tell a little story sometimes about this person. It's not always about money. Sometimes it's about recognize somebody for doing something. Recognition, in most cases, when money is met, recognition is, when the basic needs of money are met, recognition is the number one thing that people want. And that's the same for employees as well.
So I think a lot of businesses have gotten away from doing a lot of things that we used to do old school way. I remember, I bought my first car back in the 90s. This guy gave me a card, say, hey, if you refer someone to me, I'll give you $100 or $150. Sure. Car dealerships don't do that anymore. Car salesmen don't do that anymore.
Nope.
Salesmen don't do that anymore. Right. I remember the first time I went to a gym, and I had a gym membership. The guy gave me a card to say, hey, if you refer me somebody, I'll give you 1 month, 1 month free.
Sure.
They don't do that anymore. Sure. But I think now is the time, what you are saying, and to simplify, we have to get back to the old school things. We have to get back to, the phone, the referrals, the call, staying in touch with our customer.
You're absolutely right. Modern technology has made some people think that those things are not necessary anymore. But those things can be done in the old school way, but they can also be done with modern technology, right? Sending an email to somebody about referral is modern technology.
Yeah.
Sending a text to somebody once they're in your database is modern technology. Handing out a business card, or when you meet somebody saying, hey, if you'd like to take advantage of some of our specials, let me send you our app, and you'll have it right on your telephone. What's your phone number? So now I send them whether it's in a business or you meet somebody out, now I send them an app, and that's got that location on there, and now I can send my referral program. Would you like to earn $100 today? Let somebody know about such and such, or $50 today, or whatever it is. We used to give out lots of business cards to people. Mm-hmm. Some folks don't do that anymore, right? I'd give out 2-3 cards to somebody here. Give this to some of your friends, right? If they want the same kind of service. But people don't know how to ask that stuff. And so good businesses will help develop a script, not just say, if you just say, go get referral business, you're not going to be successful at that.
You said people don't know how to ask some things, and that brings me to another very important thing that I want to talk about. We talked about social skills during pandemic one time, and before the interview, I heard you talk to my, one of my associates over here about social skills. The new generation. Is it because people don't know how to ask those things? Because the new generation, the millennials and the Generation Zs and everybody, because even they don't even like to talk on the phone. They like to text, right? We were talking about that. Is it that a lot of these new employees and newer generation, they don't know how to ask for referral, they don't know how to ask for this because of the social skills they're lacking?
I think you've got a couple of things there. before I touch on that, let me back up and say all of those things that I talked about referrals, about increasing the average sale, about getting return customers, and decreasing the length of time that it takes for a person to make a decision, those all require training. And it's very, very important. That's the sales skill. That's the customer service skills that are necessary. And most people won't have that. So you're going to have to look to invest in some kinds of training in order to do that.
So training, a lot of businesses don't like to pay for training.
Yeah.
Well, what is your opinion about that?
Well, since I'm in the training business, I like it when people pay.
So I hired, I was, when I started my business when I was 21, okay? With no education in furniture business.
You are a phenomenal success story.
Oh, I appreciate it. No education in business, no education in sales, no education in anything. I always was like, man, I don't want to spend thousands of dollars in consulting or $1,000 in sales training. I mean, it's stupid. You know what I mean? But then when I started thinking, because I read this somewhere, I don't even remember what book was it, but it was like work on your business, not in your business.
Right.
I started going through this and I'm like, well, I need to start, evolving. And so the first time I ran into this guy, and it was a business consulting company, and they sales, they did a sales training for me and everything. And I was like, man, this is marvelous. This is wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean, this thing changed everything. I'm like, yeah, and I started thinking about what my dad used to always say. Son, the coffee will only be as sweet as the sugar you put in there. You want a sweet coffee? Put the sugar in there.
That's right.
You don't want the coffee to be sweet. Don't put no sugar in it.
Right.
And the more sugar you put, the sweeter it is. And I mean, and you get what you pay for.
Sure.
Okay.